Got
Good
it.
morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
And Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. And since this is our last one of the month, since we are going to be on retreat next week, this weekend, next week,
Right.
starting tomorrow, we won't be able to, we're just not going to. We're just taking a break. We'll probably have little like Instagram videos or something on our retreat because going to beautiful Orcas Island in the San Juans and right at the Canadian border up in Washington, which is gorgeous.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's an awesome place. So anyhow, since this is the last one we're doing in October, in 2 weeks it'll be November 1st, we are going to just hit the shadow dead on today.
Yeah.
Because we'll miss a Halloween episode. So this is our Halloween episode. I should have found a cloak.
Like a TV show.
Let's put the cloak on. Yeah, I know, right? To have the special holiday episodes. Yeah. And it came to me. It was funny because we had talked on Friday and we have this topic and it's all related, of course. But yesterday morning it was like, well, get on and talk about what are you most afraid of? And it's like, well, that's actually a really good topic. Because it's all interrelated, right? So originally,
and it's in our faces, we're just not seeing it. So it's already here. It's not like we have to think about it. All we have to do is see things differently.
Right. And the thing that you came back with was when I texted you was, well, how about what do you most desire? And it's like, sometimes those are both the same thing.
Right. Right. And when you get an answer back, but at least I did when I asked, what did I desire most? But then when you really strip away the ego out of that, what you desire the most, it comes up with what you're most afraid of. At least that's what I found.
And then we create it, especially when those both overlap.
Oh, right? Absolutely. Yep.
So, the thing is, a lot of times we're so afraid to, oh God, my stomach gurgles even just thinking about it. It's like, so when we look beneath this, right? And a lot of times we don't even know what that is, what that thing is that we most fear, because we bury it deep down. We cover it up with all these things. Same thing with what we
disguise it.
Yeah. And we disguise it. Exactly.
Yep.
Right. Good morning, Sandra. Yes. And then we do all these things we put so much energy to creating an entire reality, to avoiding that thing we fear the most, instead of saying, so what if that happens? And here's the other funny thing. I always talk about, there was this 1 year where I went through this several month period where it was like every client I had manifested the thing that they most were afraid of.
Right.
Good morning, Yasmin. And the thing was, it created such a huge, when they manifested those things, it created such a huge wave of change because it freed the Kraken. Right.
Oh yeah. Right.
And that's what we're afraid of. We're afraid of the change more so those things bring it. So we can call it the boogeyman. We can sit and say, I'm going to sit and watch horror flicks all the time and tap into that horror of whatever. But it can be as simple as something very tactile in our reality that we are afraid of letting go of, that we're afraid of changing, whether it's, okay, I was working with a client, and I've had a number of these in the past several years, who has a child who's very self-destructive, right? Who's in their teens. And, and then they go crazy trying to control them, trying to do this, trying to do that, trying to be the best mother, trying to make that role that so, and, when you say to them, well, your child chose you as their parent, your child chose this as their journey, and you chose it too. And so the thing is, the only thing you can do is honor each other's journey. you get down to this thing of, so what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid they're gonna kill themselves, like, get killed, or like get themselves in a lot of trouble, or get put in prison, or whatever. And it's like, and if that's what their journey entails,
Right.
then that's what's going to be, no matter what you do to try to control it.
Exactly. Yep.
And so I'm like, okay. And so it was funny because we actually did a little exercise last week where I said, okay, so let's just for a moment put judgment aside and say your child has that in their path, that they either get killed early or they do something that causes them to get put in prison. And then there's this like look of horror right on the face.
Right.
And I said, and say that your child has said, this is what I'm going to need to complete my lessons, to change, to project myself into another path, to, or to complete what I came here to complete. And that is what I have decided is the key thing that'll do it. So no matter what you do,
Right.
nothing's going to change that inevitability.
Yep.
And they're like, well, that makes you feel pretty helpless. And I said, yeah, it does. I said, and all you can do is be yourself in that space of unconditional love and do the best in what you're guided to, just provide that cushion of love, right? And know that their journey, and so that they know that their journey is their own. And all you can do is put in those little things of where you are without controlling them, and follow your guidance. And I'm like, and that's it. And the rest, and what if you took all of that energy that you put into worrying about that happening? Because it asks most parents, and that's one of their deepest fears, right? Is something happens to one of their children, right? And there was a very legitimate, not that anything is not legitimate, but there was a very powerful connected thing I found to my client's childhood that connected to her fear of losing her child. So I'm like, okay, so then look at that lesson for you, right? And then that's what's to resolve. So that's our deepest fears give us our deepest lessons, our biggest lessons to resolve and face, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Michael. And then Sandra says, facing a fear today, meeting with a lawyer to settle mom's estate. Oh, yeah, facing a fear today. Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, there you go. Well, you got to do what you got to do, right? And then once you're past it, then you're like, okay. And even if it sucked, you can say, well, that sucked. And now it's gone.
Right.
Good morning, Kim.
One of the things that I know I've looked at for myself is to think of, if I face that fear and it's not what I've imagined it to be, then the whole house of cards comes down that you've built around that. And it's like, well, I was wrong. And, I've wasted all this time. And then that self-judgment sets in, and I'm such a loser.
Well, that's the second thing is, oh, well, God, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Look at all the energy I wasted.
Right. And I've wasted my whole life when I could have been X, Y, and Z, or I could have done this, or I could have done this. And it's, I don't want to say sadness, but it's not that, oh, I feel so much better. It's like, well, now what?
Yeah. Right. Because it drove us. It drives us for so long. It drove you for so long.
And defines you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Kim said spot on yet again, of course. That's spot on topic yet again. Of course. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. It's, and a lot of times it's like, it's usually things like this. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my spouse, or, I'm going to lose my marriage. I'm going to lose my relationship. I'm going to lose my children. I'm going to lose everything that's important to me. These are the things that we fear the most. And then the key is always, so what happens is the ego gets so frozen up by that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we forget to ask the next question is, so what happens? So what if that does happen?
Right.
So what?
Right. Right. Well, and we are driven so much by our unconscious, and we're driven by the desires of the unconscious, and we judge them so harshly, it keeps them unconscious. So when we learn and face that fear, and then come to that place of, but wait a minute, I really did like that struggle. Then it's like, oh, I'm just such a bad person.
Right.
And I am all these things that I've said about myself for all these years are not really true.
Well, and then we have to look at these other things too, because a lot of times what I have seen happen in longevity is then the individual creates some other drama to fill that hole once it's been resolved, right? Because the reality then is, oh, what do I most desire is the drama.
The adventure. The roller coaster.
Yes.
Yes.
That's where the desire part comes in, because I have so many examples of, and I'm looking at this within myself right now too.
Right.
I have
absolutely.
So many examples though of people I've worked with over the years. Like there have been there's one, like I worked through an entire divorce with, some of their deepest fears through that. They manifested, everything got completed, blah, blah, blah. And on the flip side, there's this quietude period. And then there's this drama that's been created in something completely different now. And I'm watching it going, do you not see this? Do you not see the pattern? Like now you feel like there's a hole that you have to fill. So you got to put that drama in. So God, that's what I'm looking at with myself.
Right.
That's what I've been looking at within myself this weekend is, why do I freaking love the drama so much? I thought and I'm really conscious of it. So if you think of being conscious and observant to ourselves, right? And I would say at a scale of 1 to 10, I would put myself at like an 8, right? And a vast majority of many are at maybe a 4. I'm like, wow, how much unconscious stuff is being driven into the creation of our reality.
Right. Right. And how much shadow do we embrace in a minute-to-minute basis, all while touting, oh, I'm turning up the light, I'm being the light.
Right. And the ego's like, oh yeah, yep. And
you just keep believing that.
And I'm turning up the dark too at the same time.
Right. Exactly. I
mean, and so it's funny because October, so what we launched the shadow course this month, so you can still go and take it. It's actually not a timed one. It's on your own time and space, but we just launched it this month because we love delving into our shadows in October, right? We love not just delving, but like honoring them, laughing at it, bringing it to the surface, saying, hey, it's cool because I love freaky things. I love freaky, horror flicks and right.
And it's okay to have black your favorite color this month.
Yeah. And walk around in, a cape and whatever, which I thought right before I got on, it's like, crud, I should have dug out the cape and the cloak this morning. I forgot.
Right.
But the thing to always ask us is, what if, okay, what if it happens? What if the thing that we fear the most happens? Then what? Okay, I'll be dead, so I won't care, right? There's because one of the deepest fears, one of the biggest fears for people is being dead, which to me is actually not one of my deepest fears. In fact, I'm like, okay, that's always an option, right? The door.
Right. Kim had a comment, I'm going to lose myself.
Yes.
Or who you believe you are.
Yes.
That, yeah. And all this that, I've lived my entire life believing I'm this, only to find out that I'm really not.
Yeah, Michael says we have much more allowance of the shadow this month. Yeah,
Yeah.
because and yet it's funny because it's like we allow it in October and then we just shut it down again. Like, okay.
Right. And then it's Christmas.
Right. Then we have to be all happy and joyful and loving.
First we go from the shadow and embracing that. Then it's, now we got to be thankful. And then we got to give everybody presents and love everybody.
to hurry up to make up for that.
Right.
But yeah, and then we think, okay, and then what? Like, and that's the thing, that's what I'm asking. Like, okay, so would I be happy to let go of this stuff that I believe has perplexed me and held me back? Like, do I really want to let go of it? And and we laugh when I say that out loud, but that's the truth. Like, that's the thing to really look in the mirror about and say,
right.
Like, and squint a little bit and go, so am I really sort of enjoying this? In a conversation that you and I were having last week, and I said, I can't believe I'm going to admit this out loud because I'm not going to give the details on the air. But I said to Sarah, I'm like, you're the only person I would tell this straight out, but I freaking think I enjoyed that. I'm like, and how crazy is that? And I mean, and it was like torturing myself, right? Mentally.
Right.
Well,
mine is turned into, I went through the process of saying that my deepest desire is to be loved. And then when I further strip away at that, it's essentially my deepest desire is to love myself. But man, when I don't, and that's what I've really been looking at is when I don't love myself, look at all this that I can create, because I believe that I need to seek this out and sacrifice myself. And it's this crazy, I don't know, it's like a horror movie.
Right. And then it turns into, what if your biggest fear is to love yourself? Because then it'll all be done.
And it is.
And it's not even like as fun anymore, right? Because then we believe, what fun is that?
Right. And then getting to the place of looking at it, but look at the potential. But I had to walk through that whole thing of, but I've always been doing it this way, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. So do I really want to do that different? But then I find that, well, it's just not that much fun playing that game anymore. It's not that much fun playing that game, and start looking at, okay, well, what if I did? And what would that look like? And would that really solve or fill that void that I believe I have?
Right.
And that's really, I spent a lot of time this weekend on that.
That's the addiction.
Yes.
Right. It's breaking ourselves of that addiction, because it's not that we can't change it. And I see that happen all the time, as I see people change things, and underneath it is the pattern of habit, right? Which is the addiction part of, I get a thrill from this.
Right. Well, and you attract and you create and nurture relationships that hold it in place. Yeah. So in order to shift that, everything gets clunky, everything gets uncomfortable, everything gets awkward, and that doesn't work anymore, and I just don't feel the same about that anymore, and then this relationship means nothing to me anymore, or allowing the relationship to shift along with it, and then that creates a new challenge and a new drama, but different,
right? Or a new relationship altogether, right?
Right.
Even when it's the same person. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I've found interesting that a lot of times me shifting my behavior and my attitude and my needs, so to speak, allows others in relationships with me to let go of some of their behaviors that created that drama, because they were doing it out of obligation to keep us where we were.
Exactly. And that's like, That's
oh,
the dance. That's the dance we do. Yes.
right. And it's
Yep.
like, oh, so we both can let this go.
Yep.
Wow.
And that's exactly what I was looking at all weekend was, okay, if I am committing myself to being present, truly present, it's so important for me to let go of the stuff that I bring forward to create more drama with, that I love, that I admitted to you that I love, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, so that's the addiction breaking, that's the habit breaking, right? That's going,
Right.
okay, so then I have to let go of that behavior or that response or that anticipation. All
Right.
of it has to get thrown away, right?
Yep.
As part of it.
Right.
And then it's like the ego goes, but. It's like, but what if, and it's like, no, the what ifs are what caused me to create that drama within my mind anyway, right?
Right.
And then the drama in a relationship and blah blah blah, and then it's like, so if, and then it's like, so what if it causes you to lose the relationship? What if it causes you to do this? What if it causes you to, I mean, this is what we go through all the time, but it's not usually at such a level of the surface, right? And then
Right.
it's like, well then, and then it's time to do something else. I mean, that's the whole thing, right?
Right. Right.
You know, it's whether it's a relationship with yourself, with your body, with your business, with your job, with each other, with, you know, your spouse, with best friends, with your family,
Right.
with whatever, with where
Well,
you live.
and it comes back to everything is a message.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
There is nothing that happens randomly.
Right.
Everything is purposeful. Everything is meaningful. It is, and it is all right there for you to take it or leave it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, look at going back. Good morning, Gloria. Looking back at, you know, going back into that, how we purposely do shadow stuff. Oh, in October, excuse my yawn. It's almost like, it's like we let the shadow out of the closet. And then we say, oh, I love you so much. You're so awesome. Look at that. And this is so fun. I'm going to go to some haunted houses. I'm going to watch a movie. I'm going to watch some horror movies. I'm going to, you know, watch ghost things on, you know, cable and blah, 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 blah. Right. I'm going to do all that. And that's my honoring my shadow. Yeah, it's okay. So I know I judge you the rest of the year.
Right.
So I'm going to give you your own month.
Right.
And then I'm going to stuff you back in because you have to function in the background. I can't put you out front because I would judge that too, or others would judge that too much. And
Right. And, you know, you hear, oh, they put up Halloween just way too early this year.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And it's funny how this seems to be a celebration that kids embrace the most.
Oh yeah.
It's all about, you know, this freedom and this, we don't ever get to do this.
Right.
Except this period of time.
Right. Right. We get to put on the costumes we want to put on. We get to be whoever we want to be. And just think about that. It's like, okay, so what if we just let that happen all year? Right. And it's funny because I have to laugh. My oldest daughter, who's 25, it is like her favorite holiday next to Christmas, right? Is Halloween. But she leaves her Halloween stuff up in her place, you know, in the apartment in the basement where she and her significant other live. They have skulls and skeletons and everything out all year. And they're like unapologetic about it because they love, and I'm like, well, good for you. Good for you. I love it.
Yep.
Not enough to keep it out all year.
Right. I mean, it is my favorite holiday, and October is my favorite month. And you know, my birthday and both my parents' birthdays and a lot of friends' birthdays. And I remember when my mother was sick and she said, oh, I just hate the fall. Everybody I've ever loved died in the fall. And I had never heard her express that. But part of me is like, so they were set free. And it's like, how's that a bad thing?
Right.
And I just think of, it's the trees and everything gets to take a break, and the shadows get longer in the fall because the sun moves further south. And I just think it's a glorious time of year that we appreciate different things.
Right. Yes.
And the trees, the leaves are the same color all the time, except when they need the green for the chlorophyll. Mm-hmm. Which I think is just crazy to think about, the leaves being that beautiful year round.
Right. Right. So the key, I think, here is looking at, and as crazy as it is, look at your shadow. Look at what is it you're afraid of? What is it? Right. And then underneath that is somewhere, what do you most desire? Right. So if you're in a place where you feel like you're afraid of being abandoned, right? Your desire could simply be living in that fear to create the drama around avoiding it, right? Like, I mean, think about that.
Well, and what is that phrase? What you think about, you bring about. Mm-hmm. So if you're focused on, that fear of abandonment, you're going to continually create it, because that's where your thoughts are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there are people who will say, well, what if I wasn't and I was caught off guard and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay.
Right.
We hold that for some lesson at some level, of experience. And, while we're in this month of reveling in our shadow, why don't we take the opportunity to really make it productive,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Laurel says, ultimately, fear of abandonment is tied to a desire to know that you matter.
Yeah.
Right. Because we don't.
Right.
I mean, it's not that we don't, we all do. But at the end of the day, we don't even exist, right? Going back to that idea, we're all an illusion. We're not in separation. We don't even exist. So therefore we don't really matter. That's what we've created in this whole like density. And it's like, oh God, to even say that, I can feel it behind it going, what? What do you mean? Right. And we think, oh, well, like, what do we get driven? I want 1,000 people at my funeral. What do you care? You're not going to be there.
Right. Right.
Right. And that drives us. That drives our lives, right? How people think of us, how people remember us. And I always laugh because at the end of the day, you only remember people for where you are, not, like, look at anybody's parents, right? You remember your parents a whole lot differently than say like their best friends did, right?
Right. Or even your siblings.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've run into that recently. It's like talking with my siblings, and it's like, really, I never saw that. I never felt that way. I never did think that of mom or dad or whatever. And it's been, it's definitely different perspectives.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. And so it's only where you are. So it doesn't even matter. Like we put all this, we put all of this romanticism into making a difference.
Right.
Yep. And it's like,
and really the only difference that matters is the recognition within yourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we changed our energy all to, I already matter. I was curious, like say, okay, when I create, all right, when a composer creates a symphony, right? Every note is important as what they hear as the whole symphony, right?
Right.
So,
and every note already exists.
Every note already exists. And then it's just put out there and simultaneously does not.
Right.
Right. But if you think about the idea of the reality of a symphony, right? Every note every player, every instrument, every, measure is important because it's all part of that whole, right? So it doesn't ever, the notes don't have to do anything but show up. And yes, to show up, you have to have somebody playing the note, blah, 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 but it already exists.
Right.
So it's really just being allowed into this reality,
Yes.
and so it's like, okay, what if we changed our entire being into, instead of attaining something, simply allowing ourselves to be the note we came into this reality to be, right? Then there's nothing to fear. There is nothing to strive for. It's just being whatever you are driven to be, because it fits in the symphony automatically because it's there, right?
Right. And that, the journey right here, right now is to simply clear away everything that you believe impedes you from being that.
Yes.
And maybe that's the deepest fear.
Yeah. Because then
is getting to the place of clearing all that away.
Because then we think the symphony is not going to be as fun anymore.
Right. Yeah. Just like your Yahtzee.
Right. Like I talked about last week. So, and that could mean, what could that mean? That could mean it clears out every relationship you've ever had. It could clear out every living situation you've ever had. It could clear out whatever, and so like, what if we did let go of all of it and realize that it is all just an illusion anyway, right? And then it's like, well, that doesn't make me feel good. Well, what makes you feel good? Your ego makes you feel good. It strokes you, right?
Right. Makes you feel safe.
Right. And so, but when you're free in that, you're just allowing, and I hear that a lot lately in the back, just allow, even when the ego is going,
Right. The big butt ego.
I'm afraid of this, and I'm afraid of this, and I'm afraid comes from the ego. And that's the idea of losing something versus knowing you already have everything. Right. And then losing something sometimes is the most freeing thing you could absolutely do, is let go.
Right.
And it's like, but then I don't know what that is. I don't know what that looks like. That would mean a big change, like all that kind of stuff. And that's, like we get so attached to our realities, right? That the past year and a half,
every nuance of it.
Well, the past year and a half, we've started to try to deconstruct, right? Excuse me.
Right.
What our realities used to look like, because they were getting way too knotted up. Right. But so I feel like we've gotten to a point collectively where we've deconstructed a lot of stuff. And now we're like, okay, no, that's enough. No, that's enough. And the collective, at the collective level, we're like, nope, we're just getting started.
Right.
But the thing is, when we liberate ourselves from all of that, as fun as we have with it, as much fun as we have with it, and it's no judgment on it, it's no judgment on the show, but the more we let go of it, the more we let go of polarities, the more we let go of duality, the more we let go of our addiction in duality, right? And keeping things so dense.
Yeah. Right.
Because, and it's funny, I have over the years in my life, so let's look at some of these things. I have over the years in my life known people who were in abusive relationships, flat out abusive relationships, codependent, and they would get into a big fight, sometimes get abused, break up, have a whole bunch of drama, start going on with their life, but they would always leave this little doorway open, like that they would claim they were victim to, they couldn't change or whatever, to allow that person back in. Right.
Yes.
And it used to make me bonkers, because I'm like, why would you do that if you're moving on? But then that's the thing, that's the addiction. The addiction is to that drama. Right.
I ran across a TV show that has a person who is constantly in abusive relationships and the point of the abusive relationship is to seek out the one that's going to save her. And as soon as they do, then they then turn into the abuser so that then she can seek out the next one that's going to save her. And it's that constant seesaw of abuse, saving, abuse, saving. So there's always a reward for being abused.
Interesting. Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah. That's and it was very uncomfortable to watch it at the first because you could see it coming. And it was like you just got so frustrated with the characters, like, I can't believe you're falling into this trap. But it, on the other hand, served that other person to come in and need to save her.
Yeah.
And because I need to feel better about myself.
Well, that's really what it all, amounts to, right?
Right.
Whether you are the savior, the martyr, the idyllic, whatever, mother, father, provider,
Right.
You name it. It's all the roles and the idea of ourselves that we get really addicted to, that if we are with, like, that we believe that it makes us have value, right? Which means the purpose thing, like we have to have purpose. Like, what's your purpose, right? Live your purpose.
I love to be needed.
Right. And the ego loves that. It makes us feel good, or desired, or
right. It justifies me being here. If somebody needs me, then I need to be here.
Yes.
Whereas if nobody needs me, do I need to be here?
How many people I have known who had themselves or others that they loved have an extended period before they would transition off of this life because they were so stuck in I'm needed here, right, that they wouldn't leave, even with their body, like even though they were useless, right? Really, their body became so useless and dysfunctional they couldn't like get out of bed or in the hospital, whatever. Right. They fought and fought and fought and fought and fought because they believed that they were needed and that everything would fall apart without them, right? Or and then and I even worked with a couple, and the man had Alzheimer's and passed away, and his wife, she understood the bigger picture, she got it, we would talk, but she could not let him go. And she told me after he died, she's like, he wanted to go, and the kids came in and said, go, Dad, don't stay here any longer. And she goes, and I went in and said, no, don't leave me. Right. And she's like, and I know that's horrible. I can't let go. And I'm like, right, because he's still sitting here waiting for you to let go of him, even though he's passed on. So let him go. Right. But and we have those, and it's a two-way thing. So it's not like she holds that individual there. They choose to stay because at some egoic level, the lesson was to be needed, to be stuck because they're needed. Right. Right. To that other extreme, And so it's like, and we do, that's what we base our whole lives on. This is what I'm going to do so that I feel needed. And when we feel like we're not, or not desired, or not looked upon as, as someone that, you want to be with or whatever, then we feel like it's a personal insult or a personal attack. Right. Right. Well, and it's an attack on what we believe is the dynamic we've created. Yeah. 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 So that's, you want to talk about unfolding all that stuff. That would be dumping off a lot of stuff. If we could take the rest of the month and said, let's delve right in and look at our shadow and say, hey, while we're playing in the muck here and having fun with it. Right. So what is there for me to look at here? Like what is coming up? And what is coming up that I'm like, why do I love these slasher flicks so much? It's
Right. There's a reason why there's so many and they're so popular and they make so much
Right?
money.
And it's nuts because it's like, well, I mean, I personally, I used to love them. I can take them or leave them now, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'll watch one if it's there. Sometimes, sometimes I myself like the mind twister things, right?
Right. Yep.
But
The documentary type like The Matrix.
yes, exactly. But the thing is to look underneath, like, why, we and I feel like it's becoming more agitated, going back to our original discussion, like a month ago, about the agitation right before transformation, right? Like the molecules in water right before it boils or freezes, that we're bringing all this stuff. And if you think, like, honestly, there have been times I have looked, say, on Netflix or Prime or Hulu or whatever, thing you're pulling up stuff on in movies, and thinking, we have become so macabre because it's like 90% of the stuff out there is horror, suspense,
Slasher, blow it up.
murder, slasher, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, so we let all the shadow come to the surface, but then we're not doing anything to resolve it.
Right.
We are actually making it more powerful by saying, oh, hey, let's create like all these movies and books and stories and TV shows and whatever, and love them, right? But then I guess it's a way for us to become comfortable with it. But now, okay, now what do we do with it? We brought it to the surface.
Exactly. Right.
It's like, okay, so we get to that extreme of, people say, oh, I would never kill somebody. Well, but you would watch slasher flicks all the time, right?
Right.
Whatever. It's like, no, we would. Absolutely.
We would. But given the right circumstances.
Given the right circumstances, every single one of us would.
Yep. No doubt.
But and so, okay, we can accept that at some point, some part of our minds, right? But when do we get to a place where we realize, okay, it's because of all of the stuff that we've buried down so much, that we've created such a density of the shadow.
Yeah.
That we would create that such separation of just being able to passively watch somebody get killed, be a part of people, and get a part of, and the ego doesn't even want to talk about it. It's like, oh, shh, don't talk about that.
Nope.
Right. Torture and kill and maim and whatever. But, we've talked about this so many times, so many lifetimes. We've been the perpetrator as well as the perpetrator, which means we have raped, we have pillaged, we have murdered, we have tortured, we have murdered, and we have been the victims on the other side, right?
Right.
Because that's the drama. That's the stuff that the shadow creates in this separation. So now it's like, okay, if we look past all that and through all that, yes, does that mean I don't matter anymore? Well, yes, because then I don't have to create more of the drama anymore. And that means that I can just go back to my home as the home.
Right. It's the egoic perspective doesn't matter.
Yes.
Right.
And that's still very uncomfortable to just sit with. Because that's almost like we just fast forwarded through about 6 loads of something to get to that point.
Right.
But, actually it's really to say, okay, what do I want to look at underneath that? It's like, what is it that is there that's causing this, whatever, this fear, this anxiety, this anger, this judgment, because all that stuff triggers those actions that we see in the slasher flicks.
Right.
Epitomes, all of them. You can look for every one of those emotions and energies in any of those stories.
Right.
So I guess what's our clearing? Our clearing is to be able to, again, I think most of our clearings these days are about like being able to see that within ourselves, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then not just seeing it and accepting it, but asking what it's there to help us change to complete this cycle.
Right. It's that making the unconscious conscious.
Yes.
in terms of shadow and desire and all without the ego.
Well, and first of all, I feel like it's also accepting I love this drama.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
And actually saying, maybe you need to look in the mirror and say, okay, well, I have loved this drama. I have loved the darkest parts of myself, the darkest parts of my experience. I have loved them because if I didn't, I would not have created them.
Right. I would not be having this experience.
Yes. So that's the first step.
Yes. Yes.
I'm an addict. That's the first step. No, I am
Right.
Angela, and I am an
Admit
addict.
you have a problem.
Right. And it's funny because even if, you have to admit you have a problem before you can change it.
Right.
And then it's like, okay. And then it's like, okay, how do I do this differently? And then then it's for us to commit to ourselves to, like I said, this weekend has all been about every time I felt something seeping in, I would re-examine it and go, that was from before.
Right.
This is now.
Right. Right.
And if I want the change the now, then it's for me to let go of how I had it before because it doesn't align. It doesn't sync up in creation.
Right.
So maybe it's knowing how to see that within ourselves and getting guidance and clarity on on what to change, and setting ourselves in that presence of understanding that symphony, and loving our shadow and thanking it for showing us
Right.
what we're hiding from ourselves,
Right.
so that then we can
Right.
change.
Yeah.
Change
And I
that.
feel like, some apology to the shadow for
Oh,
relegating it.
huge
Yeah.
apology.
Yeah. For relegating it to the unimportant and unloved and unacknowledged. Yeah.
Dark and dirty and embarrassing and
Right.
hidden
Shameful.
away, and
Lots of shame.
yes, lots of shame. So
That's tie all that up. That's
yes,
a big,
please. I'm pretty done with
big
all of it,
package.
I think.
Right. Big package.
It's been hitting me over the head for much longer than October. So it's like let's move on now. And not only let's move on, because when I say let's move on, then there's the voice that says, but will that be fun? Really?
Right.
To move on.
But that's
it's
when
all,
you can focus on what you really desire.
yes.
And that's where the
Right. Well,
beyond this.
and change what you desire, right? To be more expansive, right?
Right.
So it's letting that, also letting ourselves let the addiction go, to thank that, to apologize and forgive and all that stuff with the addiction to all of the drama and the forbidden shadow and all that kind of stuff, right? To see its completion, to let it go, and to know that we can actually have so much more of an enjoyable existence, like even more of an enjoyable existence with that completion.
Right.
Yeah, I can feel that down my back. So
Yeah, I can feel it already starting.
yeah. All right. So everybody, let's close our eyes, take a deep breath. Open our hearts as we step out of separation back in wholeness and oneness. Outside of space and time, we hold ourselves in the vibration where that's our truth. That's from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. That was uncomfortable and awesome at the same time.
Right. I had a big old coughing fit in the middle of it. It's like, oh, I was glad I was on mute. Something to clear out here in my voice.
Sandra says, thank you so much. So on point for me today, reminding me that all of the what ifs are just my addiction to drama. I just have to breathe and stay in the now. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's funny because things that we've held on to, fears for a long time, we're almost addicted to the energy they bring about when we, worry about them. Right.
Right.
So if we get into a place where we're not worried about them and then the energy creeps in, it's like, oh, I miss that feeling. Right. I miss that rush.
Right. Yeah.
Replace it with orgasms. That's all I have to say. I mean, we have to find something that replaces the energy of the rush of the addiction to drama, right?
The drama, right?
And it's like, we'll find something, orgasms or something that, I mean, I'm not saying not drugs. I'm just saying not something outside, of you, something that like
yes.
shifts to a place of, helps you to shift to a place of self-sufficiency in terms of that presence and joy and enjoyment, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw as I let go of things and expanded the perspective, it was almost as if all the things that I had set into place to hold me where I was, to support me in where I was, it's almost like everything it was like a shutting down a play. The lights come down, the scenery comes down, and all the characters come out of costume. And then I saw all of that come back into me. That was the facet of me that I had set up to create and to hold this for me.
Right.
And that helped with the gratitude for the whole thing.
I had a very matrixy thing there.
Right.
I saw all of these little balls and they were like molecules, right? But they were like millions of them or more than that, like as far as I could see, like I could sense, right? So it was almost like, atoms, molecules, or whatever. But it was like I had found this moment of being able to see all of them and they were just suspended and not without motion, like with Neo and the bullets, right? When he stops the bullets. It was like I had my hand up and stopped everything and I saw it and then I was just like, and I just sort of went like this and it just went bloop. And they all fell
drop down.
And then I had this space to expand because before it had felt so crowded. Yeah. And that was really cool. Yeah. That was very cool.
That space, as everything came back into me, it was like the vastness was incredible. Yes.
And then we forget. That's far more awesome than any of the addiction feelings, right? It's like, okay, remember that.
Right, exactly.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to let you go and we will see you on November 1st.
Right.
Or if you're joining us out in Northern Washington, we'll see you there later this week. And we'll probably be doing something there. We'll post there for sure. So have a great one. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.